Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon or maybe this morning's webinar, wherever you are in the world. My name's Adrian Astley-Jones. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Intuitus, an Endava company. And the webinar today is around reimagining the relationship between people and technology, specifically with a focus on the private equity sector, which is where a great deal of our clients reside at the moment. Before we move forward, I'd like to introduce our key guest and a colleague of mine today, Justin Marcucci, who is Endava's Chief Digital Officer. He's been with the business many years. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great. And also, I guess, just to frame the conversation up, what we're going to cover today. So just to set the scene, Intuitus is an Endava business which was acquired by Endava nearly 2 years ago now. And over the last 2 years, we've been working together with Justin and his team and across the broader Endava business to integrate the two organizations. And today, we'd like to provide an update and talk about and discuss really, I guess, two key things, really. First one is how Endava accelerates change and helps clients succeed. So that's really around the Endava story from the beginning through IPO, and the crucial question around the so what. What does that mean for clients and also clearly for our private equity environment? And secondly, within private equity specifically, reimagining value creation and digital transformation through the investment lifecycle. So with that in mind, I think it's probably best to start with Justin, asking you, perhaps you can paint the scene around the background to, Endava, the story, the journey, and also positioning the company. So, for example, on the screen there, we can see a positioning slide, which perhaps just helps people understand exactly where Endava fits. But there's a lot of color and detail to that. So, Justin, perhaps you could sort of fill in the background and just explain that to our listeners today.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So, I think let's first start with a general overview of the business. So, Endava was founded in the year 2000 by our CEO, who is currently still the CEO and founder of the business, John Cotterill. It started as a technology and engineering and architectural consulting organization, really providing enterprise-led best practice and thought leadership in the architectural space. As the business evolved through the 2000s, we realized that the opportunity was to not just make architectural recommendations from a consulting perspective, but then be able to deliver those recommendations at scale, utilizing Agile. The business became really more complete from a spectrum of capability standpoint in the 2005, 2006 range, as we started to then do work with and expanded the business into near-shore delivery. And that meant that we merged with and acquired an organization in Moldova, which provided us with scaled engineering services. So that was the first, really the first step of the organization growing and expanding its capability set to be able to provide both consulting services as well as then technology delivery. From 2006 through, frankly, 2015, the organization scaled pretty dramatically and went from being a 200 to 300 person organization to being about a 2,000 person organization in 2015. And at that point, Endava realized the opportunity was to continue to expand its capability set to cover more of the needs of the clients that they were servicing. And so, apologies. Okay, so at that point, Endava expanded really more into the digital realm and started working with and building out a capability, some of which was built organically, some of it was through acquisition. That's how I came into the business. I had started and founded a firm, a technology, user experience and strategy organization in the United States. And at that point, we merged the business with Endava and provided the backbone for really a digital capability that we needed to replicate and build across the globe. And so I think from 2015 to 2018, the story of the business was, how can we provide cross-functional multidisciplinary teams of technologists, strategists, designers, consultants that allowed us to cater to and care for having a knowledge of the industries and businesses that our clients operated within, being able to provide them with strategic guidance and advisory services as to what they should do and why that made sense, and then deliver the solution that was ideated into production with scaled engineering services. And that took us to 2018, at which point we went public as an organization on the New York Stock Exchange and accelerated our growth even further. The idea at that point being is, we had predominantly been a kind of UK-centric organization with European delivery, Central and Eastern European delivery up to that point. And we really needed to expand the business into new geographies, namely the Americas at that point being the area that required the most strategic investment and provided the largest opportunity from a TAM standpoint. And that's why we listed in the United States, we listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It was about driving the right kind of brand exposure and creating the opportunities to participate more meaningfully in that market. So at this point, we were an organization that was scaled. We were several thousand people. I think just after IPO, we were maybe 4,000 or 5,000. We provided a range of capabilities that spanned the spectrum of, again, product and technology strategies, delivering intelligent digital experiences and world-class engineering. And we realized that the opportunity for us was to further differentiate ourselves to the market. Now, the slide that you have in front of you actually does a decent job, I believe, of talking about where we fit within the ecosystem of pure play next-gen technology companies. And we really believe we sit right at the convergence of a number of different business types. So you have traditional IT service organizations that are providing enterprise engineering at scale. Generally, they're doing so in an agile capacity. Those organizations are the big players that you would expect, whether that's EPAM or whether that's Cognizant or whether that's some of the Indian offshores. These are organizations that are providing large-scale teams of enterprise engineers. You have business and technology consultants that are looking and can provide advisory services within a particular industry segment or within a particular kind of niche technology. And those organizations really have an understanding of the industries in which they're making those advisory recommendations. And then you have digital agencies that have a fundamental understanding of the human condition and can recommend compelling experiences that make all of those things usable and attractive to the humans that are inevitably wielding the technology that we build. Now, we think we sit at the center of that. Traditional IT service organizations generally don't have the knowledge and product vision to be able to make the recommendations that they're then implementing. Business and technology consultants often don't have the delivery chops from an engineering standpoint to bring those recommendations to life. And digital agencies, while they understand human condition, often generally don't have the scaled engineering necessary to deliver those kinds of experiences in any sort of meaningful global way. And we believe we have the best of all three of those parts sitting at the convergence of those areas.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful, Justin. I think because what it demonstrates is over clearly a significant amount of time and hard work and effort building a organization not only has been successful and listed, but actually fills that gap as you outline there on the diagram. And I think that sort of neatly sort of plays into our next slide really, which is around the question of why does Endava stand out? And also this also start to talk about, I think, around private equity and our audience today around leveraging next generation technologies, multidisciplinary agile teams, and helping clients accelerate their product strategies, their experiences, and so on and so forth. And in the private equity setting, of course, having worked in that space for more than 15 years now, there was a day when you could perhaps acquire a business and sit on it, and the wind would be in your favor and you'd do quite well over a few years. But nowadays, the time is really now to leverage technology and make sure you understand technology and that you accelerate as quickly as you can within a controlled manner. So I think if you can maybe put a little bit of color around this one, Justin, in terms of where is Endava working and the idea of acceleration and product technology and strategy, where did that all come from and what do you think it means in the market today?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what's really meaningful here is if you look at product and technology strategies, intelligent experiences, and world-class engineering, that's kind of the items on the right-hand side of the page. What they really do is they kind of cover a pretty wide portion of the spectrum of how a transformation of an organization or digital acceleration of an organization would need to occur. You need to understand what you're going to be doing from a product and a technology standpoint, how you're going to approach solving the business problem you have. You need to be able to build a compelling experience, again, that is going to be usable and is going to fill the need for either your customers or your internal users or whomever that's being focused on. And you need to have the ability to provide world-class engineering, to build it in a secure way, in a stable way, and something that can stand up to, millions of transactions a day. And as you start to pull together those three larger components of ways that we can engage and things that we can build, you really start to complete the circle from an organizational standpoint. One of the things that a lot of our clients have traditionally faced is you have different organizations providing consulting and advisory services. And so you might have the big management consultants come in and they help assess your problem. And at that point, they deliver a 400-page PowerPoint that tells you exactly how things need to work. You get a high five from them, they leave, and then you hand that to your incumbent technology provider to implement. And invariably, in that handoff and in that transition, there's this chasm of accountability that opens up because your technology provider is not committed to making that successful because it wasn't their idea. And perhaps in practicality, there's a lot of things that don't work in the utopian solution that was developed by a management consulting organization. And the management consulting organizations, again, traditionally don't have the depth of technology delivery experience to understand what will and what won't work in kind of on the ground in reality. And so as we have evolved as an organization, our goal has been to close that accountability gap completely and be the ones that are not only making the recommendation about what should be done and how it should be done, but then being the same people that are putting our hands up and saying, you know what, we're gonna build it for you at scale, and we're gonna manage it and iterate it and evolve it over time to ensure that it's successful for your business. Because that's how we've built our business, is making promises, making commitments, and then delivering upon them in a really successful way. Now, where I think that provided an interest for us as relates to private equity in the private equity space is that for years, since 2010, Endava has been partnering with big PE funds and big firms in helping to take investments that they've made and transform those businesses into a meaningful way. And at certain points of time, as much of a third of our overall staff, if not more, has been deployed into building technology solutions and helping those organizations alter their business models with next-gen tech for PE firms. And so it's something we have a heritage in. Where we really saw an opportunity specific to the relationship that with Intuitus was that there was a whole area that we did not have any real visibility or frankly any sort of entree into, and that was in the strategic IT advisory services that Intuitus has delivered for years and years and years. And that made for a really interesting and initial conversation as we met Adrian and team. I mean, Adrian, you want to talk about that from your perspective a bit, some of those early conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yes, no, for sure. So just quickly before we get that bit, I just wanted to cover one other quick thing there, if I can. So there was just to sort of complete that picture, I think it's important to recognize, I guess, that Endava as an organization works across multiple sectors and multiple industries. Okay, so we're talking here about an organization that works across business services, financial services, fintech, manufacturing, logistics, consumer, so on and so forth. So and I think there's to a certain extent sometimes perhaps a misconception to a certain extent in the market per se, or the business community, which is when we talk about product strategies and software and so on and so forth, that they actually only relate to what I would call strategically tech-enabled businesses, i.e., for an obvious example, a software business. So again, Justin, you mentioned Endava has got a history of working with private equity-backed businesses. So, you know, I know and have worked personally with Advent International. I know that's one of the businesses where in the payment space, Endava supported a rapid scale environment of a very successful business. And there's others like that. So the point I'm making, I guess, and I think it's important for everybody listening today, is to really get a sense of this doesn't just relate, and the whole subject we're talking about doesn't just relate to, you know, pure software businesses. Endava, as has Intuitus in the past, worked with many more what I would call industrial supply chain businesses. So, for example, Maersk, the global you know, transportation, warehousing, supply chain business, is a core client of Endava's. So I think it's you know, it's important to sort of mention that. And I guess then the other quick mention is really around just finally positioning Endava in terms of where it is today, in terms of size of business and so on and so forth. So, you know, I think, Justin, you mentioned a few years ago it was 5,000 employees. It's now north of 7,000. Global coverage: North America, Europe, Latin America, Eastern Europe. So a growing global footprint to support businesses which are, from a private equity point of view, not only mid-market, but are mid-market and larger businesses which have got global aspirations. You know, so we do a lot of work where mid-market investors are acquiring, they might be European-based businesses, but they are acquiring bolt-on acquisitions through North America or other parts of the globe, and they require an advisor and an implementer to help them deliver on and execute on those acquisitions. So I think that's an important a distinction to make. And then, you know, as we move really to, you know, the private equity environment. So what we've found over the last 3, 4, 5 years, arguably, depending, you know, on which parts of the private equity market you speak to, but a growing trend is that the deployment, understanding, development, design, execution, whatever you want to call it, of technology is becoming prevalent across all parts of private equity. And it's now actually a core component of the value creation strategy. And therefore, in terms of the 2 years ago when we did the deal with Endava, and now that we're merging and integrating, we very much took the view that we need to be able, as an organization, as an advisor to private equity, as a technology advisor to private equity, we need to be able to leverage cutting edge next generation technology, enterprise architects, you know, deep software engineering expertise and product strategies. Because if you can't leverage that, even in the diligence environment, I think in today's rapidly changing environment, you know, you are certainly potentially, so I say, missing a part of the value creation plan. So the whole you know, strategy going forward is to create the Endava Private Equity Group, which I think if we can move slides forward, we have a slide which just positions that. Great. Actually, could we go back one slide if that's okay? Yeah, perfect. So really, the private equity group is combining the heritage in private equity of the Intuitus brand, along with the practitioner-driven approach that Justin has outlined. I'm pulling those two areas together, and there you can see in the middle of the screen, to form the Endava Private Equity Group, which brings together deep expertise in the PE technology advisory space. So we believe that that's a differentiated offering. There are many advisors out there, we're aware of them for sure, but actually leveraging the capability that Endava allows us to bring to the table from a very real world practitioner point of view, and leveraging that from day one in the investment life cycle, we believe makes a significant difference, because we're now able to advise our clients during the diligence process, so whether it's buy side or sell side, in a much deeper level, which can help them set out the value creation plan from day one. It can help them understand the price points, perhaps the size of the check they're going to write, the time scale that they have to invest over. And that is applicable across all different sectors, as I say. And I think I just want to re-emphasize that, because you know, clearly the world is moving in a technology-driven way, artificial intelligence, big data, so on and so forth. These are all can be tended to be associated with consumer businesses and more tech-enabled businesses, but the number of times that we are engaging with more traditional businesses where they have back-end integration challenges, they have a high number of internal users who need to get smarter with systems, smarter with data, is a significant part of the work that we do. So I don't know if that sort of helps, Justin, put a bit of color around that. I'll pause there because I went on a little bit there, but that might be, you might want to add to that and bring some of that to life as well.
Yeah, I think that was actually really succinctly said, Adrian. I think the reality is, as we realized the power of the Intuitus model and understood that, again, their deep heritage in providing PE-based technology advisory services, it would give us the ability to further extend, it would give us the ability to further extend the kind of value we provided to organizations that we partnered with. And Adrian, I think you said it really well. It's about combining that very senior, very battle-hardened view on how to appropriately advise PE firms or organizations either looking to make transactions on the buy or sell side, how to take that sort of capability, combine it with on-the-ground practitioner level knowledge, senior practitioner level knowledge of individuals that are implementing those transformations on a daily basis and have done so for the last 20 years. And that combination of vision and senior directional recommendations alongside of those individuals that are implementing those and see how things work when you're in the weeds, when you're in the code, is an enormously powerful combination. And yes, we believe it gives us the ability to even further complete and provide a level of service to the organizations we partner with, reducing any kind of accountability anxiety they may have about the partners that they selected, and providing them with far more comfort that across the entire life cycle of that transaction, they're getting a really balanced cross-functional set of folks recommending all of the different ways that they could proceed, which in turn helps to prove out the investment thesis that was initially put on the table.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Justin. I think the evolution here is probably best you can sort of see that by even if you look at 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was only really coming to light that an investor should do a code review of the code that they're acquiring. And again, that could have been in a consumer business as much as it could be a bespoke technology platform in a big or mid-cap industrials business where they've got internal software that's been developed. And the reluctance to do that prior to 4 or 5 years ago was strong, whereas now I think nearly it's one of the first questions that we get asked by investors is, I'm buying this business, it has technology, it has software code in it, can you help me understand it? What should we do? Can we do a code review? And of course that sometimes has some challenges around access and so on and so forth, but the answer to the question is yes, we usually can, even with limited access. And if there is no access because of various different restrictions the vendor has placed on the process, then there are other ways to try and find out as best you can whether that code base is, a good code base is maintainable as technical debt. And that again is by leveraging, deep expertise around architectural experience, software engineering, so on and so forth. And the pace of change of these technologies is so quick that you have to have that relevance. So I think, if we sort of sum that up, what does it mean in terms of, the go-to strategy and the go-to positioning for a diligence or an advisory engagement through Endava Private Equity Group going forward? Well, it's really about a team shape, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, combines a tech expert, a tech advisor, and a product expert. And in there, you may well have an enterprise architect. And the reason it's not to flood the team with full-time people all the time, and some of these people may dip in and out for a day at a time, is really because it's very difficult to make a really good, strong assessment of not only what you're buying today, so the downside risk, but also the value creation plan and the investment thesis going forward. You need the mix of skills to really understand what's the art of the possible and what's the downside risk. So for example, you could look at the code base and you could look at the architecture, but without a product strategist, could you really put the whole puzzle together and give a complete as answer as you possibly can to that private equity investor? And I think the answer today is no, you can't. Or you can, but it becomes more and more difficult to do it if you're single-threaded. So as you can see on that slide, we have multidisciplinary teams. They're deployed on a case-by-case basis across all of the industries that we've already talked about, with the capabilities you can see in the language capabilities and coverage you can see on that screen. So we think that's a powerful message, and we think it's a message which we've worked on for a number of years and we've put together and brought to the market in response to market demand. It's not the other way around. This isn't us leading the market. This is the market saying this is the direction of travel. This is where technology is going. This is the challenge. So we've shaped a model and a business which we think can directly respond to that. I'll pause there. I don't know, Justin, if you wanted to add anything finally to that last slide, and then perhaps if you do, great. If not, we can start to wrap up.
I think you said it incredibly well. I mean, there's a responsiveness to the team shape that we've built, this model that we deploy into these on a case-by-case basis. There's a responsiveness, there's a breadth of knowledge and influence, and again, there's the ability to pivot and understand how to best make recommendations that are going to drive the right sort of outcome for that organization, trying to make it, what could potentially be a very meaningful investment decision. And having a partner that can do that and be involved and embedded with the organization throughout the entirety of that investment decision process, as well as then be leading the charge in that value creation plan post acquisition or post transaction is hugely powerful, and again ends up providing a level of continuity into that decision making that just creates far better outcomes on the other side.
Yeah, totally agree. Great. Okay. Well, look, I think as with all webinars, they clearly come to an end. I'd like to thank Justin Marcucci for joining us today. So Justin, thank you very much for that.
Yes, thanks for having me.
No problem. And I'd like to also thank everyone for listening in. We appreciate your time as always, and hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to you in the future. Thank you, everybody.